Okay.
Okay. I'm just going to introduce Reverend Ernest Tabe from Cameroon. He's pastoring a ministry here in the Chicagoland area, a River of Life International Deliverance Ministry. He is a board certified chaplain, a Christian chaplain by the International Certified Christian Chaplaincy Organization. He is also a board certified pastoral counselor. Reverend Tabe also is a board certified master mental health coach. And so his license credentials identify him as a counselor, a mental health coach, and a crisis response professional. Reverend Tabe, welcome to AfriH platform.
It is my privilege once again, Dr. Reverend Riggs Aquarius. It's an honor to be in such a platform that God Himself has instituted, because you have given the time to get the education, to get the training, to get the expertise, that you are now very confident. It has increased your confidence level. And with the courage that you have, now is the time for implementation. Now is the time for implementation, and you are doing the right thing by selecting those who are qualified to be able to bring this awareness. You know, in my area as a crisis response specialist, addiction, drug and addiction recovery, master mental health, man, I just can't wait to be able to educate, particularly the leaders in Africa, because it is something that has really plied our nation, that has kept us backwards for the past 500 years. It is time for us to bring this illumination so that we can change the perspective, we can change the orientation, we can change the mindset of the people, so that we can we can start viewing different sector of the economy of the nation with a more educated lens, where we can enforce the solution to the problem, because that is the main reason for this forum, is to implement, is to eradicate, and to bring solution to the areas that me and you can testify that we're struggling. It's a challenge. It's an epidemic. It's a real problem. So I am honored to be on this stage tonight, and I am willing to get your questions as much as I can. And I believe by the grace of God, I'll give you 100%.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So now we're titled our segment, mental health crisis in Africa. And again, Reverend Tabe is here with his expertise in the area of mental health. It's interesting when we think about mental health, Reverend Tabe, there's so much going on around the world now. For me, looking back, just a few years ago, I never heard a lot about mental health. We knew that people had issues, mental instability. We knew that was a problem. But I never knew the detail of mental health, but it became a part, and a parcel of our culture. And you hear many times on the news and, in forums, you hear discussions about mental health going on. In fact, the most notable thing that really began to draw attention when all these celebrities, and public figures, begin to talk about their struggle with mental health. For example, we had this, she was the world number one. I don't know what she's anymore, but Naomi Osaka, who was the world number one in tennis, women's tennis. Well, she struggled with mental health to the point that she had to pull out of some of her international, competitions. Now, think about it. I mean, this is a sport that brings in millions. And to see an athlete have the potential to get millions of dollars for playing this sport, withdrawing because you mentioned mental health issues, it kind of illuminates the problem. So I want us to dialogue on this social issue, because this is the social issue that not just impacting the world, but impacting Africa. I mean, not just impacting America and Europe, but impacting Africa as a part of this global community. I would dive in with this. First, I'm going to ask you just some general questions, then we're going to bring it down to Africa. Talk to me, when you hear what is mental health? What is this thing called mental health, and why we shouldn't take it for granted? Well, what is mental health?
This is, you've asked me the question from a secular perspective, but being a Christian counselor combined as a master mental health coach, I will start by making reference to what the Bible says, that as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. The Bible says we should not be conformed to the things of this world, but we should be transformed by the renewing of our mind. The battle of mental health is in the mind. It is something that has to do with your psychology, your behavioral well-being, and your social interaction. It has to do with the way you behave, the way you think, the way you act, the way you relate with people from the family, in your job, and in your community. Now, mental health, it is an area where people are just getting to know now, as you made it clear. It is something that most people don't even know. I will list a little bit of the types of mental health, the type of area of struggle. You talk about depression, anxiety, schizophrenic, ADHD, post-traumatic stress disorder, OCD. Those are areas that we've never taken into consideration to see what is going on. You see, the problems that mental health has caused in the community, number one, is that it is a disability that can lead to death. It's a serious disability. It kind of like make you vulnerable. As a person who is struggling from mental health, most of us don't even know the symptoms. It plunges you into serious battle, conflict, disorientation, genetic predisposition. And I'll give you an example. Depression, which can result to serious addiction into drugs, alcohol, and pornography, and all kinds of stuff that can result from anxiety, which many of us don't even know that it is something that has to do with the mental stability. Once your mind is tempered with, how do you handle your stress? That's a serious area. Wow. How do you handle your day-to-day struggles, challenges, battles, emotions, mental, psychological? Psychological battle has killed so many people in such a way that if you don't know how to process it, if you don't know how to manage it, it is going to hinder your productivity, your fruitfulness, your interaction. It is going to lead you into serious legal and financial problems. It is going to demoralize you. It's going to cause you to seclude yourself. People who are going through mental health, it is family conflict all the time, unhappiness and decrease in enjoyment of your life, all kinds of social problems and isolation. You know,
You know, wow, this is a serious issue, and I'm glad that you mentioned some of the impact and that it has on society, because you talk about depression, you talk about stress, you talk about anxiety, and those are things that when it impacts a home, when it impacts a family, it can be devastating. It can be devastating. It can also, we know that, I mean, just looking at those things alone that you mentioned can also lead to domestic violence and and all sorts of issues that just social issues that would denigrate, what community is all about and what culture is all about. But now I want to, let's switch to Africa. Let's switch to Africa, because our platform is to educate Africa, right? Let's switch to Africa. When you think about mental health issues, okay, impacting Africa, what comes to mind? How is this mental health crisis impacting Africa?
we all see, brother, it is a serious stigma in Africa, where we have not been able to identify all those social problems that we just mentioned: poverty, serious poverty, social injustice, and all kinds of violence and all kinds of crime that are resulting, conflict in the family, disorganization in the family, addiction, relational problems, and all these difficulties. It is a problem that has not been addressed, because once your mental health is affected, number one thing that happens to you is that you isolate yourself. Yes, it causes you to miss work, to miss school, the activities that you're supposed to be involved in, to be productive, to be fruitful, to get the economy up and running. You are not productive. It reduces the productivity, and it increases violence, alcohol consumption, drugs, and addiction in Africa. So it affects the workforce, and it kind of also causes so many people to go into disability. When you are disabled, you're shut down, you're locked down, it kills, just like HIV.
Wow.
And when I think about Africa, that we don't even have what it takes to diagnose this. We don't even have what it takes to debunk this mystery, because number one problem in Africa is negligence. Can we dwell on that a little bit?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
The number one problem that the leaders have not addressed is negligence. Negligence in the sense that all these problems that we just mentioned, this social exclusion and impoverishment, all kinds of crime and addiction, and reduce productivity, creativity, innovation, and growth and progress. All these things, we don't pay attention to it. All these things, we have not been able to properly, the leaders have not been able to properly address this. They attribute all these problems to just normal day-to-day activities. They don't know that it is something that I said something about genetic predisposition. It also has something to do with the DNA, with the genetic constitution in many families that requires medical attention to correct different hormones and different flow. So if it has to be taken care of, they must pay attention. The leaders, they must pay attention that this is an area, this is a sickness that is killing people just like HIV, just like cancer. And this is even eating up the fibers. Because if you look at the workforce in Africa, if you look at the workforce in Africa, they are very limited productivity because young men are affected. Their mindset needs to be reorientated. And people are sick, they don't even go to the hospital. They don't even know what is happening to them. I know of so many who don't want to function, who don't want to do nothing. It's mental battle. The battle is inside. It's within. So they need to pay attention.
It's interesting because there are Africans healthcare professionals on the ground. There are people, in this, working, on the ground in the medical area back home in Africa. What can you say to them? What can you say to them? I mean, because they're working on limited resources.
Yes.
And so I mean, how can government come alongside these professionals to help her citizens? Because if the people's mind is not at ease, then as you mentioned, productivity is non-existent. Then they cannot work, they just regress, just sit down and just wait to they just sit down. And their brain, their mind, no innovation, no creativity, nothing. That's a regression. So how can government come alongside the professionals that's there, even though they may not have a lot of training, but how can government come alongside them to address this issue on the ground in Africa?
Number one, I said negligence, right? Now you ask a question about the professionals. How can the government come alongside?
Yes.
To be able to enhance, to be able to motivate, to be able to encourage them, and to be able to create sensitization so that the people can know that this is an area that is supposed to have its own ministry, just like finance, technological, whatever department. Mental health it is a whole sector that needs to be funded. It needs capital. Where there is limited capital, it places a restriction on your creativity. It limits your options. It limits your ideology. It limits your productivity. It demoralizes you when there is no capital. And the government can come alongside because it's also a problem of ignorance. Ignorance is eating the fibers of the entrepreneur, of the limited professionals that they have. The government needs to come in with education, training, mentorship, coaching, affiliating, correspondence with national organizations, education, training, mentorship, coaching to debunk this ignorance. And the government needs to increase competition by giving different options. In America, there are many mental health organizations. People have so many options to choose from. There is no option in Africa. Very few professionals with very limited options. And competition is not encouraged. Come on. Competition, we all know the benefits of competition. They need to educate. They need to encourage. They need to funding, capital, funding.
Reverend Tabe, it's interesting because I was just looking at one of the questions that came here, and obviously you just addressed it. But the question was, how can it's from Dr. McCarthy in Canada. He says, how can mental issues in Africa be addressed systematically, in a systematic and comprehensive way? You mentioned the whole idea of funding, and you mentioned education and training, creating awareness.
Yes. Mentorship, coaching, affiliating with different organizations, with nationals. Spread the reach. Open it up. Do not be afraid to invite professionals who can come alongside and educate. Life coaches.
It's interesting because as you were talking earlier, you mentioned that people don't even know that they're struggling from these things, and the more we become educated, the more we become aware of these things. That's a reality because it's such a subtle killer. You know what I mean? It comes in a camouflage. It comes in a disguise that it's hard to really pinpoint. But as we go back and as we interact with people, even just mentally think about people back home, you see that, wow, this is a mental crisis they're going through, but they don't know they are going through it. They don't know they are going through it. And so if government is to go to eradicate this issue, then the whole idea of training, you talk about mentorship, expertise, those things need to come into play. And that's why AfriH is here, but because we are hoping that through these platforms, they will get to see that it is a problem that need to be addressed. Because the stress level of people because of unemployment is high. When you cannot provide for your family, it affects your mind and it brings stress and anxiety. And that, as you mentioned, it leads to alcoholism, drug abuse, domestic violence, and all those things that's happening. So with the limited time we have left, let's talk, a little bit more about the governmental sector. Why is it, government don't realize this is a problem? Why government most times we look at all the other, and as you said, government normally consider this, this a normal issue. This person just lazy, this person don't want to work, you know what I mean? Why do you think sometimes it's a problem that government eyes cannot be open to the reality of this thing in the culture?
Yeah, you use the word systematic. Systematic. It is something that is embedded in the system. It's a tradition. It is a stereotype. For example, the Israelites were taken out of Egypt, but they always want to go back to Egypt. Egypt was not taken out of them. Most of the thing is colonialism. The colonial master has not been able to let you know what he's enjoying. It is still the problem of servitude and bondage, because if they can control your mind, they can control your life. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So the system is programmed. The system is programmed to, Lord help me. It is a program. It has been subjected to that mindset, because one of the ways I told you about a study that was done by Stanford University, assisted by Elumelu Ogechi, Ifeanyi Ogechi with Elumelu Foundation in Nigeria, and they were focused on the entrepreneur. How can the government help the entrepreneur and to change their mindset? So they came out with two mindsets: exchange mindset and organizational mindset. The exchange mindset is the micro mindset that is limited to production, production, services, customer service, relationship, and to increase value of their employee and value to the community. And they operate in a micro scale, and they look at organizational mindset. Organizational mindset is the one that they look at people as resources. They manage people. They are involved in creative, in production, innovation, large scale competition, international. And they found out that in that research, the organizational mindset, who has the capabilities, but there was a problem. There is no finance, there is no funding, there is no capital, and people are willing to change the system, like the organizational mindset. They have the mindset to have our own car company, our own different drugs company. All those things they want to produce, they want to expand. They are willing to train. They are willing to go through mentorship and education to change the system. But the stereotype in the exchange mindset, it is a stereotype of greed, self-centeredness. People don't have love for others. There is so much greed and self-centeredness, self-aggrandizement, self-achievement, self. If you look at the Western world, it's not about self. It's about collective action. It's about the bigger picture. It's about the general welfare of everybody. How can the healthcare and all this sector work out when some few people sit on top of the resources and they control the resources, and they don't know how to distribute it to these entrepreneurs? That even in this research, they realize that the women, the entrepreneur, gender disparity, the entrepreneurs that are emanating from women, they are increasing irrespective of their gender. But they are doing what, but yet they are still going through serious discrimination, and they don't want to fund their ability. They don't want to encourage women. So it is a stereotype. It's a stereotype that needs to be debunked.
Wow. You know, I wish we had more time. I wish we had more time. But you know, one of the things I like about our segment, we just condensed it, just like a power pack segment. And I'm sure, Reverend Tabe, I got to have you here for part 2 of this. We need you on a part 2 of this. But you know, in closing, you know, could you, we got about 5 minutes left. Could you just briefly give a final thought concerning, you know, the whole idea of mental health and how Africa can kind of, you know, overcome make some steps towards victory in this area? Just 2 minutes on that, and we can close tonight.
I said it. Number one, the negligence area, you cannot neglect it anymore. It is a legitimate problem. It leads to death. It causes death. It is as serious as cancer. So you must pay attention, government. You must pay attention. Number two, funding. There is no way you can function and get this thing done without proper funding, without capital. You need to allocate budget to help so that they can train, educate, mentor, and coach, and raise many young people to become mental health coaches, mental health experts. Okay, ignorance is no more accepted. And you need to increase the competition by creating different options. And particularly women. There is so much discrimination. There's so much discrimination with women. So you need to encourage women to go into mental health. And if you want to increase the social fund this area. Pay attention to this area.
Well said, folks. We're going to leave it there for now. Obviously, I will let you know, definitely we're going to have Reverend Tabe back. He's very passionate. This is the area of expertise as a mental health coach. We're going to have him back for other segment sometime in the future. But we want to just conclude with our segment here. This is AfriEdge, folks. And as these African professionals come and share their expertise, we are hoping that you can link us with African nations, African government, African leaders, because they need to hear these words of, you know, these words of encouragement and challenge, so that they'll begin to assess these things and make the necessary changes to help Africa rise up. When the mind of the African is delivered from depression and from mental health issues, then innovation, creativity, and as you mentioned, productivity will become essential. So if Africa is to go forward, then we need to address the mental state of our people. Thank you, Reverend Tabe, for being with us tonight. We against that. Our time is pretty much over now, but I'm going to have you back here. I'm going to have you back, Reverend Tabe. We need to have another segment with you. But thank you all for being with us tonight. We appreciate you all. Again, this is AfriH, African for the Restoration of Ethics in Government, and we deal with mental health crisis in Africa. We will have a part 2 to this with Reverend Tabe in the near future. But thank you again, and just have a wonderful time. And we'll leave you our motto for this organization: doing better by doing right. Africa can do better if she simply does right. Good night, everybody. Thank you for being here.
Good night. Good night, everybody.